As of today, the president's plan to avert the fiscal cliff still does not meet the two standards that I laid out the day after the election. His plan does not fulfill his promise to bring a balanced approach to solving this problem. It's mainly tax hikes. And his plan does not begin to solve our debt crisis. It actually increases spending. Our plan meets these standards. It cuts spending and paves the way for real job growth in our country. In the 5 weeks since we've signaled our willingness to forge an agreement with the president, he's never put forth a plan that meets these standards. And frankly, it's why we don't have an agreement today. The longer the White House slow walks this discussion, the closer our economy gets to the fiscal cliff and the more American jobs are placed in jeopardy.
Good morning. The president has said on a daily basis that we should be passing a balanced plan. But what we hear from the president is continuing only discussion on one side of the ledger. It has always been about tax rate increases and nothing about spending. And we insist to say, look, Mr. President, let's talk about a balanced plan, but where are your specifics on the spending cuts? Even his own advisors say that any kind of agreement that we come to has to deal with the prime drivers of our deficit, which is the spending and particularly the health care entitlement programs. So we asked the president to please sit down with us and be specific, and let's get that balanced plan. It's interesting that the Senate has passed a bill that is a bill calling for increased revenues of $850 billion. The president continues to say, support that bill, pass that bill. Well, how is that the case when he continues to say we also need $1.4 trillion in additional new revenues? So there's an inconsistency here, and let's stop playing games. We want to be here for the American people, and we want to make sure that we get a balanced solution so that we can start focusing on the one thing that we have seemed to have forgotten, and that is it's about jobs and the economy. It's about getting people back to work, making sure their life works again, and to finally get us back into the mode of a growing economy. The president seems to be walking us ever so slowly towards the cliff. We've said we're committed to staying here. We're going to stay here right up until Christmas Eve, throughout the time and period before the new year, because we want to make sure that we resolve this in an acceptable way for the American people.
As the debate continues over the fiscal cliff, I'm reminded once again, and I think it's important that we remember that Washington doesn't have a revenue problem. It has a spending problem. And you look at the record debt that's been accumulated over the last 4 years, the projections are pretty startling over the next 10 years as to $1 trillion deficits as far as the eye can see, a nearly doubling of our debt. 2 years ago, we had a baby girl born, and at that time, her share of the national debt was $45,000. And on the current track, by the time she gets in high school, her share of the national debt will be $100,000. $100,000 per child in this country. America deserves better. Our children deserve better. And that's why we're not just after the quick fix. We're after a real fix. This is our moment to lay out that framework to address tax reform, to address the spending reforms that America needs. And we need the president to get serious. We need him to get to work with us so that we can solve this. The sooner the better. The clock is ticking and we're running out of time.
As a mom who survived raising 2 teenagers, there were a whole lot of days we weren't speaking the same language. When they said they were chilling, I threw them a blanket when they really were just trying to relax. When they would tell me someone was sick, I was worried about their health when they really just thought they were really awesome. It's similar here in Washington these days. When we talk about a balanced approach, Republicans mean we're talking about putting revenues on the table as we have, and spending reforms and spending cuts. When Democrats talk about a balanced approach, they're talking about raising taxes and raising spending. When we talk as Republicans about protecting investments, we're talking about protecting my mom's small nest egg that she's saved throughout her life so she can retire on. And Democrats are talking about taking more of people's hard-earned money and investing it in federal spending. We've got a problem. Everybody knows that when you spend more money than you take in, you take on debt, and no American family can operate that, and the federal government shouldn't operate like that. Even if we gave the president everything he's asked for, tax increases, heck, if we eliminated the Department of Defense for him, we would still be in the red next year. Republicans are here to solve the problem. We need a balanced approach, and we need the president to get serious.
Along with Lynn's line here, we do seem to be trying to address two different issues. The president's trying to deal with the fiscal cliff. We're trying to deal with the debt and the deficit. Those are two very different things. This is not about getting through this next month. This is about trying to solve the issues that we face as a nation today, and that is the debt and the deficit that we face. Now, the president's very fond of talking about the math. Let me give you a few things dealing with the math. 2012 will be the third highest revenue receipts into the United States government ever in the history of our nation. The third highest revenue ever received in the history of the United States is coming in 2012. So in this down economy, as paychecks are smaller, federal revenue continues to increase. The president's very focused on trying to get the Clinton tax rates, but he completely ignores the Clinton level of spending. So what we've got to be able to address is a $1 trillion deficit here. If we were just back at the Clinton level of spending, this would solve the issue that we're dealing with today. And so we've got to find a way to be able to address the real driver and the real issue that we're facing. That is the spending. Until we can address that, it's not going to solve anything.
Mr. Speaker, a few years ago when they talked, we saw a vote meltdown here in the House and the market at 777. We've not seen performance from the market in the first way in the bond market or the Dow. Do you think that, you all, I'm not giving her talk about the economy, talked about Dow. Do you think a reaction like that could force the sides together and could possibly prompt some sort of a deal in the next couple of weeks?
I'm not going to talk about what outside factors could impact these negotiations, but I will say that presidents get elected to lead. The president talked about a balanced approach. We've brought a balanced approach. But I've said this, and you've all heard me say it, and I'm going to say it one more time. We are going to begin to solve our debt problem. And we're not going to be able to solve it by kicking the can down the road and doing all the gimmicks that have been done in the past. It's time to address our spending problem.
Can you tell us anything about your conversation with the president last night, characterize the call, and any details on the counteroffer you sent when they brought their revenue number
Well,
down?
the president and I had a deliberate call yesterday, and we spoke honestly and openly about the differences that we face. But listen, the president's calling for $1.4 trillion worth of revenue. That cannot pass the House or the Senate. And if you look at our budget, we had no new revenue in our budget. If you look at the president's budget, he had $1.6 trillion worth of new revenue in his budget. Listen, we've been reasonable and responsible in our approach to this, and we're going to continue to do that. But it's time for the president to do his part.
Last question. After hanging up with the president, are you less hopeful that you could bridge the difference to get a deal?
Listen, I was born with a glass half full. I remain the most optimistic person in this town, but we've got some serious differences.
What are the chances on a different topic that the House would consider this big supplemental bill for Hurricane Sandy?
You know, the supplemental has been sent up to the Hill. The relevant committees are doing their work on the supplemental, and when they're finished, we'll take a look at it.
How do you think you went from cordial, that's how you described the call yesterday at noon, to deliberate, or, I mean, let's just call it what it is. It sounds like it's pretty tense.
Well, it's two different calls.
No, I know, but how did you go from, describe the process by which you went from cordial to tense? What got you?
I didn't say it was tense. Listen, there were some offers that were exchanged back and forth yesterday. And, the president and I had a pretty frank conversation about just how far apart we are. Thanks, everybody.